But before I introduce you about the brand, let me just run you through the Q&A process. If you have any questions during the webinar, please type your questions in the Q&A box. We will take up all your questions post brand presentations. While we run you through the presentations and brand details, request you to keep sharing your queries into the Q&A box to make this session more interactive. Our today's brand is NLP for Kids. I invite Ms. Ankita to take this webinar forward along with our guest, Gemma. Ankita, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Sandeep, for introducing me here. And welcome, Gemma, on board. We are very happy to see you here again. Gemma Bailey is the founder director for the brand NLP for Kids, which had been founded back in UK in 2007. She has put her expertise with children onto a platform where she focuses on building confidence, resilience, and persistence in children by using NLP techniques, tools, and resources, which becomes as an added benefit to make the children more sustainable and have more decision-making power in themselves. So Gemma is here with us today. She is early in the morning up and with us, where we look forward for this session with her, and I would request her to please help us further on this journey.
Of course, thank you so much. All right, I'm going to share my screen with you, everybody, and give you some background and history around NLP for Kids, who we are, what we do, and then I will briefly tap into how we see the market growing in India for all of those of you that are interested in the NLP for Kids brand. So if you don't know already, NLP stands for Neuro Linguistic Programming. So the neuro portion relates to your thoughts, your attitude, your mindset, and what's going on inside your head. The linguistic part is based around communication, so from the word language. That could be the communication that you have with other people in the outside world, but it also relates to how you communicate to yourself internally. So if you're wondering exactly what it is that I'm talking about when I say, you know, we've all got a little voice inside our heads, and you're wondering, what's she talking about, the little voice inside my head? That's the little voice that I'm talking about, the one that just asked that question. The P stands for programming. So that relates to our habits, the patterns of behavior, the things that we consistently do in our lives. So NLP is something that's been around since the 1970s. It's still relatively new in terms of the different psychotherapy options that exist out there. It's a little bit like a cognitive behavior therapy, psychotherapy, and counseling, or a talk-based therapy, all rolled into one. It's used in lots of different arenas other than therapeutically. So NLP is also used for sports coaching, business coaching, in leadership and management, and in education. So the way in which we're specializing in using NLP is from that therapeutic perspective, but specifically for working with children and young people. And so for those of you who may be familiar with NLP already, and have maybe even gone through a practitioner training, you've, I'm sure, like many people, had the thought, wow, I wish I'd learnt this stuff when I was younger. Why didn't they teach this stuff in schools? Well, the point is we do. And that's exactly what I'm here to tell you about today. So here in the UK, we have a team of practitioners that are based all over the British Isles, from Ireland to Wales, the Isle of Man, and all over England. We have 30 practitioners that are based here. And they're all using their NLP for Kids program in slightly different ways. Almost everybody is working with children in one-to-one sessions where they're helping them with things like overcoming anxiety-based issues. Anxiety is a really big subject area. They are working with children around building their confidence, overcoming habits, recovering from traumas and phobias. So really anything that relates to mild to moderate mental and emotional well-being issues. So this is really about making our future generation far more resilient so that they are able to cope with this ever-changing dynamic world that they're going to be growing up in. Some of our practitioners are also delivering our programs in schools. So when we work with schools, we may be working with children with one-to-ones, but we might also be running group sessions there. So we have 9 different programs that we offer to schools with all different sorts of subject areas, overcoming exam stress so that they can improve their academic abilities, anti-bullying, communication skills, confidence building, so all sorts of different areas. And then we also work in our local communities, and that could indeed be running workshops in the local communities for issues that we're noticing locally. So if we see that we've got a lot of anger in our community, then we'll be running anger management workshops for the young people there. We've also got 3 groups that we work with. So obviously, predominantly children and young people. Typically, these children are aged 7 years and over. We do work with younger children at times on a one-to-one basis, but it really comes down to the individual practitioner's skill set and their comfort levels with working with much younger children. And then we go all the way up through the teenager spectrum into sort of young adulthood as well. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a short while. So we've got children and young people are one of the groups we work with. We also work with parents. So for those of you who are parents, you know from seeing the other parents around you that you are the greatest influence in your child's life. So it's really important that what we're delivering in our sessions with children and young people is mirrored back at home in order for it to have the greatest level of impact in the shortest possible amount of time. So the more we involve the wider system around the child, the more we're going to be able to help them to improve and recover quickly. The third group that we work with is teachers and other professionals who might be involved in working with children and young people. So again, if we can affect that wider system, make sure that the techniques and the strategies that our practitioners are developing and introducing to children are also mirrored in the classroom setting. Not only is that going to affect individuals, but actually it can change an entire classroom dynamics. Here in the UK, we often complain about how large our classroom sizes are. I know in India, yours are probably double the size of the ones we've got here in the UK. So I'm not entirely sure what it is that we're moaning about, to be honest. But here's the thing. It's really important that when you've got these really large groups, that the dynamics in those groups are working effectively. And that where possible, there's cohesion and that group is really well managed so that everybody in the room gets the best possible chances to achieve their academic success. So those are the 3 areas of work. We've got one-to-ones, we've got working in schools, we've got working in our communities, and then the 3 groups are children and young people, parents, teachers, and other professionals that work with children. So here is our head office here in the UK. So we actually have a physical premises from which we work. Not all of our practitioners work in that way. So some of them are delivering their coaching sessions like this here on Zoom. And that's really something that's taken off since COVID happened, because we couldn't see people face to face during that time. Many of the practitioners have a kind of hybrid model where they may start by seeing their young people in one-to-one sessions face to face and then move them over to Zoom once they've got that connection and rapport. Some are exclusively on Zoom, some stay exclusively in one-to-one sessions as well. So 10 years ago, we bought our premises. This is an interesting scenario because we're actually based on a high street. So we're sort of sandwiched between actually an Indian restaurant. And on the other side of us, there is a solicitor's, so a lawyer's firm. And then there's a hairdresser's. So we're literally in the middle of a town centre delivering mental well-being on the high street, which seemed like a peculiar thing 10 years ago, but these days it's a really interesting situation because people walk past that big shop window that you see there, we see them go by, and then we see them walk backwards and come back into view as they read what's on the window and then pop in to come in and say hello. So in terms of how our practitioners operate, it's both virtually and in real life face-to-face sessions as well. So as we mentioned there at the very top, we are an award-winning franchise here in the UK. One of the ways in which we really support our practitioners is through the use of technology. When they come to live training with us, as well as receiving a big chunky manual in the post with their physical resources to work through, and a USB with lots of videos for them to watch, the rest of their training is really supported by technology. So we have a really comprehensive online platform where they will be logging in and watching demonstrations of all of the techniques and strategies that we use with children and young people. They're actually going to see those in action in demonstrations. After each of those demonstrations, there's an assessment for them to work through to ensure that they've actually understood and comprehended that content. And they go through 20 modules of that training before they come on to the live training with me. So it's still me that runs the live training for all of the practitioners here. And on that live training, we're going to be then actually putting your skills into action and practicing with those techniques and strategies so that our practitioners then are really geared up, ready for when they come to do this stuff in real life. Now, on the other side of the training, we have an additional platform that our practitioners have access to, and that gives them access to all of their resources as practitioners. So letters that they might be sending out to schools, contracts that they're using to sign up with parents, all of their professional development resources. So we're really keen to make sure that our practitioners don't just do training once and then skip off into the sunset, but are actually proactively improving their skills. So every month, a little bit like this, we host a webinar where they're going to be getting access to further training and further resources to up their skill set. We also provide them with free retraining every 3 years with us. And we also have get-togethers on Zoom just as and when anybody needs it. We've got a really proactive WhatsApp group where the practitioners are helping each other and supporting each other, both from a marketing perspective, but also a therapeutic one as well. We're also members of something called the Children and Young People's Mental Health Coalition. So this is an organisation that brings together lots of different bodies here in the UK that are working around children's mental health. And you can see the list there. Some of those names I'm sure will be familiar to you. For example, I'm sure you've heard of Comic Relief, University of Oxford. These are all people that are real game changers in the mental health sector for young people, and we are part of this coalition. So in terms of how we got started out, before NLP for Kids, I already had a company called People Building. This is my grown-up NLP training company. This one is also a franchise. And through this company, as well as training, I provide different resources. So I started out by providing hypnosis scripts and hypnosis audios. I have a podcast, which is published on iTunes. When iTunes first began, I was there. I was one of the first people, and I stayed in the top 10 of the alternative health download chart on iTunes for 5 years until I took a break and paused the show for a while. Here you can see me at my very first book signing with a very interesting hairstyle there, I might add. This was way back. I collated loads of my hypnosis scripts. They were published in a book, and all of these materials help to comprise our membership club. So we still have a mental health membership club for adults in employment here in the UK who are suffering with work-based stress. The book got translated into Russian. I have no idea how or why. I don't know why. I have no affiliation with Russia whatsoever, but for some reason I'm popular in Russia, so that happened. And then later we had the NLP for Kids book, which was published. So this one was self-published. It's available on Amazon. And something that we really encourage our practitioners to do is to really make the most of any one piece of work that they do. And I'll tell you a little more about that shortly. But this book came from 4 webinars that I once delivered. The webinars were transcribed and a book came out of it. So as well as selling the recordings from the webinar, the audios from the webinar, the script became the basis for the book that you see here. So we're really good at sort of making more from any one piece of work that we do. So these brands are also related to NLP for Kids. When we are working with teachers or parents, you can see on the two sides there, we've got those pieces of branding that we use, hypnotherapy for kids in the middle there. When we are working with older young people, as I mentioned, we go right up into those older teenage years. We may be using our NLP for Students or NLP for Teens logo. Ultimately, they're receiving the same content. It's the same quality content, the same strategies and techniques, but we brand it up slightly differently just so that they've got that connection and rapport with the branding. And then we also have NLP for Professionals, which is our branding that we use if we're working with people who are like teachers. So, for example, foster carers or people within social work or healthcare professionals, then we'll be using that branding instead. We've got lots of other organizations that we collaborate with. In fact, I need to update this slide because we've had some very interesting collaborations really recently. One of our most recent collaborations has been with a corporate company. They are landowners or estate agents, you might refer to them as, and they've actually sponsored one of our practitioners to deliver 2 programs in schools, so in 2 different schools, for the next academic year. So this is a contract that to NLP for Kids is worth £20,000. The school haven't had to pay for that work to take place. The practitioner is getting paid, and the organisation that's funding this, the estate agents, they get to look great because they say that, you know, we're doing really lovely things in our community, we're helping the children in our community. So it's a really viable way for our practitioners to build these relationships with schools and actually get sponsorship and funding from elsewhere to deliver their work, so that it's not coming from the school's budget and it's not coming from the parents' pockets whatsoever. And so we've got all of these different brands that are collaborating with us to help us deliver our work in this way. We've got some data here from our own practitioners about what their interaction with NLP for Kids has been like over the years. So as Antika said, we've been running for a while now here in the UK, well over a decade. And so we've had practitioners who have gone through several life cycles with us. You know, their 3-year or 5-year license agreement has come to an end, and they stayed. And actually they've got all of the training, they've got all of the skills, but they still stay. And it's because of this kind of data that I'm sharing with you on the screen here that really makes it feel like a worthwhile organisation for them to remain with once they've got started. I'll briefly tap into some bits and pieces around the earnings here, just so that you've got some ideas about it. So we can see a couple of our practitioners here are hitting things like the £2,000 a month mark after just a few months of getting their businesses up and running. I mentioned that contract earlier, which is being funded by a separate organisation, a corporate company who's got some social responsibilities that they like to fulfil. So that's happening for Isabella on the bottom of the screen there. She didn't do any of the marketing for that work, but it's landed in her lap. And so, you know, some of our practitioners are very fortunate that we have these opportunities we're able to present to them. I have a couple of practitioners here. These guys frequently work together, delivering parenting skills workshops or teachers workshops, or some of those more professional based workshops. So this one at the bottom here took place for a very popular UK children's charity. It was a very short day's work, but a really good return on investment for the practitioners that delivered that particular training day. Here is Ian. Here is one of our top performing practitioners here in the UK. He does a couple of days a week in schools. The rest of the time he's delivering his one-to-one sessions 100% on Zoom. So this man doesn't have an office to rent. He's doing this all from a room in his own home. He started NLP for Kids whilst he was still running his own business. He had a separate business before he came to us, and gradually transitioned over to become full-time with NLP for Kids. He hit the £1,000 mark within his first 4 months of training. He's gone all the way up the ladder in terms of adding in the different levels of training that we have to offer, and is now one of our top performing practitioners. So I said earlier, why do they stay and pay when actually they could skip off and just do all of this by themselves? Well, here on the screen, you can see I actually asked our WhatsApp group that question. So another potential franchisee had asked me this very question. So I said, you know, if someone's interested in joining the franchise, what would you say to them about why you stayed? And so they're saying things like, it's important because and exciting because I'm expanding my skills. Belonging to the team, the benefit of each other's experience is really important. Huge knowledge of wealth and willingness to support each other. So that sort of team aspect of it is super important for them. Support from a team who have been there, done it all, and are leading by example on it. So those are the sorts of things that people talk about when they're referring to their reasons for belonging to NLP for Kids, long after they could have left, having come to the end of their license agreement. They decide to stay and add on another 3 to 5 years and stick with us. So in terms of how we are supporting our practitioners in getting the work that they actually get out there and do, there are 2 streams of marketing happening simultaneously. There's the stuff that we are doing here at that office I showed you earlier, where we're sending out letters, we are reaching out to schools, we are running social media. And then there's the marketing that our practitioners do independently, which really bumps up the level of work and activity that they're doing. So they're using those resources that we provide for them. So they're sending out the letters, they're following our templates for writing articles. We actually provide them with a brand new marketing kit every single month based around a different subject area every month. That includes things like memes that can go on to Instagram, reels that they can send out onto TikTok, articles that are already pre-written and they just need to add commentary to so they can put it up on blog posts. So they get all of the resources they need to be able to succeed. This leads to their one-to-one sessions taking place with children and young people because we provide them with a website where they're going to be advertising and promoting themselves. But that one-to-one work then, you know, can also lead to the workshops that you're delivering in the community. Some of the children that you see in one-to-ones will switch over and start coming to workshops instead. That then leads to sessions that you might be running for parents. So for the parents of the children you're seeing, you can also recommend that they come to workshops or one-to-one sessions. Then we've got the other groups that we work with as well. This could include charities, nurseries, children's services, health visiting teams. So there's all of those professional groups that we might be working with too. And then there's the work that we deliver in schools. So these are like the 3 areas of work that I told you about earlier. The work we do with schools usually starts out with a free introductory session. And as a result of that free introductory session, the school might then begin to utilize the practitioner to deliver regular workshops in their school. They might just go for a one-off workshop if they need a little bit of, you know, some calming techniques ahead of exams that are coming up. So just something to really address an immediate problem. We've got our school placement program, which then takes place on a regular basis up to the course of an academic year that we're delivering workshops for there. Of course, the teachers are going to be seeing what we're doing, and then that leads into us delivering workshops for teachers or even one-to-one coaching sessions for teachers as well. Certainly here in the UK, our teachers are some of the most stressed, burned out professionals that exist in any sector. So the one-to-one coaching for teachers is really very valuable for addressing their needs and their mental and emotional well-being. And then we've got all of this being delivered in either live face-to-face sessions or in online training. So everything that you're seeing on screen here can be duplicated and addressed in an online sector instead of being delivered live. Now, the key thing, as I mentioned earlier, when I talked about our book and how the book had been created from a webinar, and how the webinar had turned into audios and the audios turned into the book, is that any one thing we ask our practitioners to do needs to turn into something else. So we've got this process here of cross-pollination. No one thing you do is just one thing you do. It always can be translated into something else. There's always another group that we can be accessing, reaching out to, another service we can be delivering to them. And from a business perspective, this makes a lot of sense, because acquiring brand new customers is far more costly than selling to the customers that you've already got, the people that are already sold on your service and like what you do. So for that reason, we're coaching our practitioners continuously about, well, if you've done some really good one-to-one sessions, invite the parents along. If you've done some really good sessions with the parents, put on a series of workshops. If you're seeing a pattern or a theme in the issues that you're dealing with, turn that into an online webinar series. So everything that our practitioners need to be able to do those things are provided by us here at NLP for Kids. So that is that in terms of my presentation there. But I did also just want to share with you briefly, because I know one of the things that I came up against when I was there at the exhibition in Delhi, there were lots of people asking questions about, well, you know, here in India, we really don't talk about mental health. And if you'd have said the same thing to me prior to COVID, I'd have agreed that the same thing happens here in the UK. You know that the British are famous for having a stiff upper lip, meaning that we are not going to show you our emotions. That is just not the way we roll. Well, when COVID happened, there was a real game change, and we were lucky because we had already been beating the drum and talking about the importance of children's mental health. So we were there as soon as the tide changed. Now, I've been doing lots of research into the Indian market and how people are responding and talking about mental health these days, and generally what the vibe is around it. And there's a couple of quotes I wanted to share with you. And I've got loads of research here. If anybody wants the links to this, you're very welcome to have it. So in 2019, so this is before COVID existed, here is something that was written about the Indian market. In our country, the discovery of a mental illness is often followed by denial and hesitation to seek help. Despite its enormous social burden, mental health remains a taboo subject that is susceptible to age-old stigmas, prejudice, and fears. Even though mental disorders can be cured or controlled, most people tend to sweep their issues under the carpet and suffer in silence. Not only do we need to actively foster awareness about mental health, we need to create awareness about the absurdity of those stigmas attached and to mental health in order to eradicate them. Now, that's 2019. Let's fast forward, and I'm going to bring you now into the more modern times, the post-COVID times that have happened. There's been some really good stuff that have taken place in India around mental health and well-being, and specifically for young people's mental health. So one from 2020, so this was a specific study that took place, welcomes that public attitudes towards mental health in India are positive. In fact, the India sample showed one of the most open views on mental health, with 42% stating they would feel very comfortable talking to someone about anxiety and depression, more than double the rest of the world's rate, which is at 19%. Additionally, I've got another one here. This was from a study in 2021, how India perceives mental health shows a marked change in India's attitude towards mental health. What does this mean for the mental health treatment and future of people living with mental illness in India? In this study, mental attitudes towards mental health interventions, 92% of those surveyed said they would support a person seeking treatment, which is a substantial jump from 54% in 2018. So the tides on your side of the world are changing. The attitudes are changing. Things are going to start improving around children's mental health first, because we always care for our children before ourselves, and then it will follow through to adults later. The reason why we are launching this here in India now is because we want to be on the crest of that wave as things start taking off for you guys over there. And we'd really like to invite you to join us and become a part of that, and be part of that journey of making a difference for your young people. All right, so that is all from me. I think we are diving into some questions now.
Thank you so much, Gemma. that was really insightful. Yes, Sandeep, we do have some questions on board. Like we can support and assist Gemma to help answer them. I can't
So
hear
sure,
you.
sure, we'll get into that. But before that, I so can relate with what Gemma shared about India's thinking about mental health and all. This is such a good insight about how it is treated in India, and now how the thought process have changed over the years, right? So let us get into the question answers. We have received some questions. Okay, so somebody has asked, what is the largest market for you? Uh, according to you, what is the largest market in the entire world for you? Is India one of them?
I think India is definitely going to be one of them. I mean, here in the UK, we've done really well to attract 30 practitioners on board. And I was saying to someone the other day, in terms of the population of our country, it doesn't even equate to one of your cities. So if we can do what we've done here with, so few people, then actually the potential in India is enormous. I know that we've got some projected figures of having around 50 practitioners on board within the next 3 years. Actually, thinking about it by comparison to what we've done here in the UK, and it's really just been me that's been, marching to the beat of this drum here. I don't have a huge team. I don't have a sales force behind me. So I think we're being very modest by saying 50 people in the next 3 years, because I think the potential is absolutely enormous.
Great. So the next question is from Chandrika. She is asking, since India operation has not yet started, so what would be the opportunity which she gets if she becomes the first franchisee, and what are the help which she's gonna get from the brand?
Yeah, so on our side here in the UK, we're going to be taking full responsibility for your training and your ongoing support for you as a practitioner. So all of those soft skills that you need to be able to do the job, those are going to come from us, and that support is going to keep coming from this side of the planet. In terms of your business startup, so getting those first few clients, building those connections and affiliations with schools, that's all going to be happening on Franchise India's side. They have a whole team there that's going to be taking responsibility for those sorts of things.
So the
That
next query is from Mr. Mujibul. He's asking, if I want to take franchisee, do I need to be a psychologist or a therapist to run this franchisee?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So NLP is not regulated in the same way as psychology, for example. So there's lots of modalities that exist for helping people around their mental and emotional well-being. And some of them are in that more professional sector, let's say, where people have gone through a long time of academic training to be able to achieve their qualification. With NLP, it's classified as an alternative therapy. So it's not something that's an academic qualification, it's an alternative qualification, which means that you don't need to have the foundation of being a psychologist or having that academic background to be able to do this. If you do, that's great, but it's definitely not a requirement. I actually just did my master's in psychology and completed it last year. But as you know, I'd been running NLP for Kids since 2007. And even though I have this more academic qualification, actually NLP is still the thing that I use the most. So it's my preferred technique and strategies that I use. So it's not something that's essential.
Okay. So I have another query, which is from one of the investors. She is saying that, how much time does it take for a new franchisee to deliver in a country like India, where mental illness is still a taboo for most of the cities and most
Yes.
of the families rather.
Now that it's not. I think she wrote that question before I delivered my stats to you. How long will it take? Here in the UK, so I'll give you the comparison first. We say to our practitioners, give yourselves 3 months after the training has completed to get yourselves up and running. We say 3 months really as a caution, not because it's going to take that long. So Franchise India are going to be mirroring some of the most successful strategies that we run here in the UK to help our practitioners get up and running to begin with. And one of the strategies that we use, which is successful here and will absolutely be successful in India as well, is we run Facebook advertising. And we specifically target parents who are scrolling away on Facebook. And we place adverts on there to say, do you have a child who would benefit from more confidence or overcoming some anxiety? And it's a very soft introduction. We receive lots of inquiries as a result of placing those adverts. Our team reaches out to those parents directly, tells them a little more about what we do. And then some, obviously not all of those inquiries, turn into consultations for our practitioners to deliver. So that same process is absolutely going to work in the same way in India, because as I mentioned, you have an even larger population of parents that we would be able to access and reach out to using that strategy. So for that reason, your initial startup is looking to be within that 3-month window as well. Typically, it will be shorter, but as I say, we like to sort of veer on the side of caution and to give us 3 months to really get the ball rolling on things. Relationships with schools takes longer. That's historically always taken longer because there's more people to speak to, there's more red tape to work through. It's not a quick decision like it can be with a parent who has an immediate need. So in terms of getting your relationship set up with schools, you're probably looking from somewhere like the 6-month mark into the 12-month mark. A lot of our practitioners who get started with their one-to-one sessions find that actually they're enjoying that work and they maybe put off the schoolwork for a year anyway because they want to get more experience and skills under their belt from delivering their one-to-one sessions. So one-to-ones looking at up to 3 months, for schools looking for 6 to 12 months to get those relationships started.
Such a detailed answer, and you covered the facet really well. Our next query is how much gestation period a new franchisee will get before they start paying the royalty to the brand?
I'm going to hand that one over to Antika because she's a lady with the knowledge on the numbers and and just how the sort of financial operations are going to be taking place over there.
Surely, Gemma. So, definitely, we as Franchise India Knowledge Service, once you on board with us and you complete your training, we will support you for the next 6 months with the GTM plan that we have for NLP for Kids in India with our franchise partners. And along with the GTM plan, it takes the royalty comes into work after like around about 6 months, so that we give you a hand holding to get your business running. Gemma would be doing her part for sure, but we as Franchise India Knowledge Services are in hand with you to get it rolling.
And
Great.
6 months is very generous because we only give you 3 here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kita. So, one of the most pertinent questions which we generally receive on any franchising business, especially when it comes to comes from a company which is settled abroad and looking for franchise in India, is that uh, what would be the marketing help which should be given by the brand first? Second thing, what would be the new franchisee responsibility when it comes to raising awareness in his local market?
Yeah, good question. So in terms of the marketing, lots of the resource aspect of the marketing is already done. It's already in place. There's not going to be too much tweaking and changing that's required to move that over to be suitable for an Indian market. So in terms of the resources we already have at our disposal, we have posters, we have flyers, we have brochures, we have letters, we have all of the marketing kits that I spoke about earlier. So although we release new ones every month, we also keep all of the old ones. Those have been running since 2012, I think. So you have many, many years worth, sort of 12 years worth of kits with social media posts that you can use based around different subject areas. So all of that's already in that online forum that I mentioned, ready for people to download. So those sorts of digital resources, or if you want to take them to print, those hard copy marketing resources are there. They already exist. We've been using them. We've tweaked them so that we know what's working. We've split test them. So we've got stuff that's really very effective. In terms of the marketing around actually reaching out and making contact with the people that are going to be your customers later on down the line. That side of things is going to be taken care of by Franchise India. So they will be doing those initial calls and setting up consultations with the people that are going to be your clients. So parents of children who are having challenges, for example, they will be reaching out to and speaking to the schools that you will be delivering this work in, building up databases for schools for you to begin making contact with. So we do an awful lot of that for you. And you can still be successful if you leave it to us to do the work. My recommendation, however, is that you speed up the process and also really make the most of your business by putting all of this stuff into action yourself as well. Because when we've got both of us coming at it, when it's coming from those two sides, both what we do and what you do, then everything builds much more quickly and your potential for success duplicates. It really, really improves. Ultimately, you are going to be a business owner. So we want you to act like you own your business. And, there's some really useful things to come from that, because you can find out, well, what's the person next to me doing and how are they doing what they're doing over there? And you can build and grow with each other. You motivate each other with that slightly competitive streak that ends up coming into it. And if you really want to be successful, then you should be invested in doing everything that you can do, as well as us doing everything that we can do for your brand to be successful.
Well answered. So we have another next question coming up from Mr. Akash. He's saying that, so he understands that the gestation period is 6 months. However, he also wants to know what are the macro factors which he needs to be aware of when he is opening a franchisee for the first time in India, and for the brand which is successful in other parts of the world, but this is a new thing in India.
Sure. I think to some extent we can't fully answer that question yet. I can make guesses and anticipations around the things that might be the macro factors based on the kind of thing that I've seen happening here, which is, sort of across the board, something that can happen with our practitioners. So firstly, when you begin doing your initial consultations with parents, even though you've been through the training and even though you have all the resources, you might still get nervous because you're a human being. And as a result of that happening, maybe those first few consultations that you deliver aren't going to be your best work. Not everyone is going to translate into a paying customer just because you got the opportunity to get a paying customer. And it's really important that you keep that in mind, because otherwise it's easy to get disheartened. The reason why we tend to manage the inquiries from Facebook from our Facebook advertising that we're running for new practitioners is because we might get 100 leads that come in, and we're going to try and speak to all 100 of them. We call them each 3 times before we say we're never going to speak to this person. Of those 100, there might only be 25 to 30 that translate into consultation sessions that the practitioner is going to be delivering. Now, for us, we're very well practiced at this. So if we have the first 70 who all say no, we're not going to break our hearts over it, because we know it's just how the pattern runs. But when you're a brand new practitioner and you're really excited to do this and you make 70 calls and everybody says no, then you can get disheartened and stop doing the work, or stop doing it with the enthusiasm that you should have. And then number 71, who would have said yes, you never get to speak to because you didn't make the call. So those are kind of universal macro issues that can show up for practitioners, regardless of where you are in the world. The selling and the interacting, and maybe even some of the therapeutic challenges that come up. Sometimes we're working with children who have had really challenging circumstances, and it's sad. You come away from the session feeling good because you're making a difference, but sad because of their story. These are things that take place no matter where you are in the world. And these are the reasons why being part of a team and delivering this as part of an organization is so important, because you need those extra voices in your ear to say, you're doing great. This is perfectly normal. It's part of the pattern. It's part of the journey, and everything's going to be okay, so that you don't lose motivation. So I would say, those are some of the sort of issues that are universal the world over that you're going to be running into.
Well covered. Before we end this call, I think we have taken most of the questions, and thank you, Ms. Yama, for answering them so well. Before we probably take end this call, we want to take the last question. Somebody's asking, what is the repeat customer percentage, B2C or B2B? How many customers come back basis actual data?
Oh, good question. So with your one-to-one sessions, you're developing a highly personalized connection with those people, which makes it much easier for them to come back. Now, that being said, our goal from a practitioner perspective is somewhat in conflict with our goal from a business perspective. From a business perspective, we want people to come back, right? We want repeat customers. But from a therapeutic perspective, we want to solve their problems. We don't want them coming back. We want to know that, we resolve the issue. So what tends to happen instead is that you might have people who come back, but it's maybe 3 years later because some brand new thing has happened. It's a completely different issue. It can also be the case that in a family, for example, you work with one child. I've had it before where in one family I've worked with both of their children and the dad. The only person I haven't worked with is the mum. I think she's holding everything together like mums do, right? So that's the kind of way the repeat business works, is it's more about them coming back either at a much later stage, or you kind of end up working your way through the whole family. And then, of course, there's the sort of word of mouth business that comes from that, because the mums on the playground tell the other mums on the playground, and then you end up meeting people and they say, oh, you worked with so and so, and then you have to rack your brains and remember who that was, and then you start to see how everybody's actually connected to each other that you're working with. So that's how the repeat business works on the one-to-one side of things. With schools, typically, if we get a year-long contract with a school, we've got a really good window of opportunity to prove that what we're doing works and is worthwhile. So then we tend to have much longer, maybe 4, 5, 6-year relationships with schools. It's only if there's a change of leadership that they might revisit the budgets, or, ask questions about, can we do things in a different way? That means that that contract then might come to an end with a school. Lots of the schools here in the UK, and I actually don't know if it's the same in India, but lots of our schools here are in what we call a trust, an academy trust, which means that even though they're different schools in different parts of the country, they're all run by the same company. So when we get into one school that's in an academy trust, actually we can end up then in 3 other schools that are within that trust as well. So that's where the repeat business comes then with the schools. And I would suspect that there's probably some sort of similar system that would take place in India as well.
One thing is very interesting, and I totally go by with it, that repeat customers are obviously not good for this business. It is always word of mouth and references, because obviously the ultimate objective is to solve the solution so that the same customer doesn't come back. And obviously, business from the same family means more problem for the mother, as you said. So that is also, by God's grace, it should not happen. So I request Ms. Ankita to share something before we end this webinar, and before we move to Gemma for final remark.
Absolutely. So, Gemma being in UK, we become her forefront here in India. I see there are a lot of people who have a lot more questions here, but because of lack of time, we are not able to answer all of them. But at Franchise India, I am supporting Gemma expand here in India. So any questions are welcome. You can always reach me on email. I'll share it down in the chat box as well, so that you can drop me an email to have a consultation on Zoom, where we can discuss about the business perspective of NLP for kids here. And if there's any further questions required, I will be happy to address them with you on a call as well. So
Sure.
anything further? Sorry. Yes, Sandeep.
So while Ankita, you put your phone number and email ID for one-on-one queries. I would request Gemma to give your final remark before we end this webinar.
Yeah, of course. Well, firstly, thank you for having me. It was lovely to have the opportunity to answer all of your questions today. So thank you for those. I guess that the final thing that I would say with you guys is from having now been to India and collaborated and spoken a lot with the Franchise India team, I can really see, genuinely see the potential, not just for growth of this business, put that to one side for a second, but I feel like your country's going through an evolution at this point in time. You know, there is so much opportunity for your country to grow and prosper, and for everyone who is there working hard and making their contributions to society to really capitalize on what is going to be like a huge growth in human potential over the next few years. And in order for that to really prosper in the way that you would want it to, it's so important that that next generation that's coming up through the ranks are mentally fit and mentally strong, because they're going to be taking care of all of you in your old age as well. So we we really want them to be fit, robust, and good people. We want to be raising good people in our countries, right? So I think that this is an amazing opportunity for you to be a part of making a difference and, you know, really changing the future for your society.
If I may speak for all, I would really definitely like to say that we have learned a lot today about how to deal with this, about how this is a very beneficial factor for our society and for a country at large, which is full of budding youth. With the influx of social media and other prospects, we tend to forget about these issues. We don't tackle them. We always keep it under the rug. Thank you, Ms. Jemmo, for giving us such an informative but detailed session. And with that note, I would thank you all for your time. Thank you, Ms. Jemma. Thank you, Ankita. Thank you to all our audience who have been part of this session. Stay tuned. We'll again come back with more business opportunities again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.